Hello. With cloud computing now accepted as a mainstream phenomenon, the next question to ask is, what happens next? Where is the next wave of innovation coming from, and what will it look like? And what do service providers need to do to innovate in the cloud?
I guess I come at the question from a connectivity service perspective. Clearly, effective cloud service delivery to enterprise customers requires a very sophisticated suite of underlying connectivity services, which we think can be built effectively with using Carrier Ethernet 2.0. These services have to be very agile, they need to be very dynamic, they need to be very automated. The cloud applications themselves have to be able to adjust the service and request changes on the fly, for example. So an underlying suite of very flexible dynamic connectivity service is a prerequisite.
First of all, service providers have to decide what it is they want to be, okay? There was a couple years ago this idea that it was very important for network owning operators, that type of service provider, to compete with the low-cost pure cloud suppliers. Quickly, that became something that wasn't appropriate for them to do. They could never keep up with an Amazon Web Services, a Google, or something like that. So what's important for service providers now to compete and to innovate in cloud is how to meet the demand for enterprise applications as they move up the stack in terms of mission critical nature and workflows. This is where things like network performance, network reliability, network predictability, and also security come into play, and that will be the true growth of sort of the enterprise class cloud. So that's an important area to innovate. A second key area to innovate is how people connect to cloud services. There are several types of cloud services. There's private cloud services, and there are public cloud services. And what many companies want to do is to get the best of public cloud services while maintaining the crown jewels, if you will, in a private cloud environment. How to make that seamless. So connectivity becomes a really critical issue, and it is an area where service providers can differentiate. It's an area where a company that does not own network resources, frankly, will struggle.
The biggest thing they're doing right now is figuring out the organizational challenge. So you would think, innovation in technology, organization, well, that's the fact. Is the CIO going to run the show or the CTO going to run the show? And depending on that, is a server admin going to be in charge, or is the network admin going to be in charge? And depending on that, the right architecture and innovations will come out in the industry.
But what are service providers doing right now in terms of innovation?
Well, I think what we've seen is obviously a necessary progression away from legacy static type services with fixed bandwidth TDM to more flexible Ethernet services. So they're putting the hooks in place, the fundamentals in place to eventually start to introduce new innovation. So we're seeing a lot more bandwidth on demand. We're seeing more customer self-service portables being introduced to the industry. And we're seeing a lot of API development going on, some of it proprietary, some of it standards-based, to enable greater degrees of automation, both, primarily, I guess, within a single service provider environment, but also across multiple providers increasingly.
What we're seeing service providers do, particularly the ones who are targeted to the multinational corporates or the large enterprises, is to create this capability to cross between the public internet and the services available there and the private or locked down cloud services that they need to access to. So what you're seeing is flexible environments to create that connectivity. There's a couple operators that made an announcement just in the past 9 or so months, an area we're going to see more and more. Another key area that service providers are doing right now is in the area of creating links to cloud partners. So again, service providers don't necessarily need to offer all sorts of cloud services. What they do need to create is links to the cloud services that their customers want. So they become the shop front, if you will, and to facilitate that, you need the proper open interfaces, the APIs, the adherence to standards to create that linkage. And in some cases, you need solid partnerships. And you're seeing, for example, AT&T do a lot of work in creating an ecosystem of cloud partners that tie into their network services.
As an example of prevalent innovation, what will be the role of open APIs?
Well, open APIs are going to play all sorts of different roles in, the modern new network of the future. An example might be APIs between two service providers to exchange order information to enable one service provider to request that a service be connected across the partner network. A lot of that is done manually today, but that'll also, two APIs would exchange information to enable that kind of transaction to occur.
Most service providers will not be able to survive in the cloud marketplace and generate the revenues or the increased revenues they expect from the shift in architecture, application architecture, by going it alone. They will have to be the centerpiece, if you will, of an ecosystem. And that will only happen if they open up their crown jewels, their resources, their network assets and capabilities, security, reliability, all these things via APIs. Now, the question is that done in a proprietary way that just links into their world, which we're seeing some of the operators doing today, or are there open approaches to go that way? We think that initially it'll be proprietary hooks and links in, and then eventually they'll evolve into a more open environment.
The way interoperability will happen is either through open source or open standards. You cannot deny that. Open source has a whole multiple set of bodies, right? Whether it's ODL, OPNFV, ONOS, et cetera, et cetera. Open standards, with ETSI and ONF and MEF. When they come together, open source is much more faster, but then eventually open standards is much more scalable. So the role of APIs, if they're incorporated into open source and open standards, will be the right way to go.
But what will the customer benefits be?
Well, it's really a price performance issue. Customers don't want to pay for capacity that they're not using. They want to get bandwidth on demand when they need it, where they need it. And of course, Ethernet, one of the tremendous benefits of Ethernet, from that perspective, it said it's driven the cost per megabit way down. So ultimately, the customers are going to pay less more, and they're going to get the bandwidth they need when they need it.
The customer benefits of cloud innovation from the service providers should be more choice, more flexibility, more agility in the way that they deliver the application services to their end users. Obviously, there is a cost savings element to that as a driver for businesses. So I think that right now, enterprises have an idea about what they want to do, and they have a goal in mind about how this type of structure will help them. Unfortunately, what they can't see is how they can make that connection easily. And I think that the innovations that we're seeing now from operators in terms of working together in partnerships, in terms of opening up their APIs, in terms of making themselves more flexibility via network functions virtualization and SDN and all of that, will create this platform, if you will, that crosses into different operators, creating this multi-cloud option or capability or availability that enterprises will benefit from.
The biggest customer benefit is the speed at which the service can be created, taken down, and modified. And it is even more critical as IoT comes on board, where a service can be set up in milliseconds and taken down in seconds. It doesn't have to be a long service. So the agility has to be there in the network to make this happen.
Innovation is clearly in the future of cloud computing. The only question is where it's going to take us.